Morning, dear children. Now today we will start with a new chapter, upthrust and Archimedes principle. That is chapter 5. So this chapter, in this chapter, we will discuss about how the body will floats, why the body will sink, okay, and also the liquid will also exert force. And that force exerted by the liquid, we call it as the upthrust or the buoyant force. Okay, and also the Archimedes principle about the relative density, all these things we discuss it. Okay. Now, first of all, we will discuss about the term buoyancy and upthrust. Now, first of all, upthrust. Okay. Now, thrust is a force. As you know that we have already been done this term, okay. Thrust or thrust we call it. Thrust is a force which acts perpendicular on the surface, and upthrust means upward force. Upthrust means upward force, and this upward force is exerted by the liquid on the object. So every object will exert the upward force due to the immersed part of the body. That means when the body is immersed in a fluid, in a liquid, the body will experience the upward force. Okay, and this upward force we call it as a upthrust. Now, when a body is partially or completely or wholly, we say it, when a body is partially or completely immersed in a liquid, the body will experience upward force exerted by the liquid. And that upward force we call it as a upthrust and the buoyant force. Okay, so upthrust is also known as the buoyant force. So all the liquid, they always exert upward force on the body which are immersed on it. Okay, so the liquid will exert upward force, and due to that upward force, an upward force can be less or it can be equal or it can be more. Upward force can be less than the weight of the body. Upward force can be equal to the weight of the body. Then upward force can be more than the weight of the body. So these are the three conditions. Depending upon these three conditions, the body can able to sink, the body will float. Okay, so these things will occur, will take place. So when we discuss about the term upthrust, when we define it, when a body is partially or completely immersed in a liquid, the liquid will exert upward force on the body which are immersed in it. And this upward force is known as the upthrust or the buoyant force. And the property which the liquid exerts upward force to the body immersed in it, that property we call it as a buoyancy. Okay, so that is known as the buoyancy. So buoyancy is a property in which the liquid exerts upward force to the immersed part of the body. When the body is immersed, and the upward force will be, this upthrust will be exerted by the liquid only when the body is immersed in a liquid. When the body is not immersed in liquid, the liquid will not exert any upward force. To produce upward force or the buoyant force, the body has to immerse in a liquid. So when the body is immersed in a liquid, then the liquid will exert upward force, and that upward force we call it as a upthrust or the buoyant force, and the property which the liquid will exert the upward force to the body immersed in it, we call it as a buoyancy. And to understand about this upthrust or the buoyant force, two examples we discuss it. One is the empty tin can immersed in a water, or pushing the empty tin can into water and pushing a cork in water. Now you take an empty tin can and close the lid, right? Close the mouth of that tin, okay, with the lid. You take a tumbler, a tub, and fill that tumbler or a tub with water, completely with water. And you take that empty tin can and you just drop it in the water. What you will observe here is that the tin can will float. That means the tin can, the maximum portion of the tin can, the surface of the tin can is just above the water. Only a small portion of the tin can will remain under the water. So that means when we consider the size of the tin can, large area or the large surface of the tin can will remain above the water and a small surface will remain above below the water. That means the tin can will float. Now, what you will do is that now you push the tin can. The empty tin can you will push under the water. When you start pushing under the water, what you will feel is that you will feel some upward force. You will feel that some upward force is acted on that tin can, and that tin can will try to come up. And that means this tin can will try to push your hands upward. Okay, but you go on pushing the tin can. So when you put the tin can under the water, more and more force is needed. More and more force is needed. Okay, and when that tin can goes deeper and deeper under the water, the upthrust exerted by the water on the tin can will increase. The upthrust will increase. Okay, and when the upthrust will increase, the liquid will keep on pushing the tin can. Okay, and therefore more force is needed to keep the tin can immersed in the water. So after that, what will happen? Under the water, the tin is under the water. Your hand will also remain under the water. So that you have pushed the tin can under the water, since the upthrust or the upward force is still existing there. And you leave your hand. Once you leave your hand, what will happen? Immediately the tin can will rise up. It comes up. It never remain under the water. Once you remove your hand, once you remove the force, okay, and once that force, when you withdraw it or you remove it, immediately that tin can will rise on the surface of the water. Again, start floating. Okay, so what happens is that now what will happen is that now this upward thrust, which is exerted by the water on the tin can, is more. The upthrust is more, okay, than the weight of the tin can. So that is the two forces will exert there. When the tin can is under the water, when you place it, when you immerse in the water, the two forces acted there. One is the downward force, which we call it as the weight of the tin can. Weight of the tin can which act vertically downwards. Okay, and other one is upward force exerted by the water on the tin can which acts vertically upward. Okay, and so since the tin can is empty, it is light, and the weight of the tin can is less than the upthrust or the upward force exerted by the water, so therefore the tin can will float in the water. Okay, and what we have done is that now the tin can, we are pushing the tin can down. As long as you keep keep on moving the tin can underwater, more force is needed. Okay, more force is needed in order to keep the tin can immersed inside the water. Okay, that means you will experience that. You can try it at home also. Okay, you will experience your hand or your fingers will feel some upward force, some more force will be added. Though you are pushing the tin can, but the water will push the tin can upward. Okay, and you will experience that force, and that force is the upthrust, or we call it as a buoyancy. So, therefore, once you remove your hand, then what will happen? That tin can, from which has been immersed under the water, it rises up, it comes up. So when it comes up, again it starts floating. Okay, so what happens is that the weight of the tin can is less than the buoyant force, and the buoyant force is written by a symbol FB, or the upthrust of the buoyant force can be written as FB. Okay, and the weight is taken as W. Capital W is the weight of the body which is immersed in a water or in a liquid. Weight W is the weight of the body, and FB is the buoyant force, okay, or the upthrust we call it. Then the other one is the cork. A cork is also very light. When you drop the cork on the water, the cork will float. larger portion of the surface of the cork will remain above the surface and the small portion will remain under the water and they will float. And what to do that again, you want to put that cork under the water, immersed in the water. The same thing here, the same process will follow here. Okay, once you take that cork under the water will exert some force on the cork, and that force will be the buoyant force or the upthrust, and the upthrust it will be more and more force is needed in order to keep the cork under the water. And once you leave your hand, then again the cork will rise up. So now why they float? When you push the empty tin can in the water, okay, they comes up and again they start floating. Then again the same thing, the cork again, when you push it under the water and leave, again the cork will also rise up. Now why it happens is that, already I have told you that two forces will act there. One is the weight of the body and other one is the upward force. Okay, weight of the body acts vertically downwards and upthrust will act vertically upward. So when the upward force is more than the weight of the body, then the body will float. Okay, that means the body will float means the body will float in such a way that larger portion of the body will remain above the surface of the water and small portion will remain under the water. Okay, and if the weight of the body is more than the upthrust is less, the upward force exerted on the liquid is less, and the weight of the body will be more, therefore the body will sink. Okay, and if the upthrust is equal to the buoyant force, when they become equal to the buoyant force, then they will float, in which the larger portion of the floating body will remain under the water. Larger portion of the body will submerge under the water, small portion will remain just above the surface of the water, the body will float there. Okay, so these three conditions are there. Okay, so these three conditions in which the body will float on the surface, the body will float under the surface, or the body will sink. So it depends upon the weight of the body and the upthrust exerted by the liquid. And this upthrust is exerted by gases also. Okay, that is by air. The gases which has been, the body which has been placed in a gas or immersed in a gas. Okay, the gases will also exert upthrust. And even our body will also exert upthrust, since our body is in contact with the air. The air is a gas, but we do not feel that upthrust. Why we do not feel that upthrust is that because of the weight of our body. Because the weight of our body is more than the upthrust exerted by the air, so therefore we won't be able to feel that upthrust. If our weight of the body is less, then what will happen? Our body could have rise up. Okay, but our body will not rise up, our body will not float in the air. Okay, now why it happens? Though our body is also exerting the upthrust, which is provided by the gases, but we do not feel that because of the weight of the body. Okay, so that weight of the body is more than the upthrust exerted by the gases. So therefore, even gases will also exert upthrust, same as that of liquid. So this is about the buoyancy and the upthrust.